Yes, we are back. After a long month, a break I took because I had to pull a Nixon and go to China. The podcast of champions is back. Right before a busy July. Superman, Fantastic Four, SDCC, they're all coming up. And Marvel Studio is kicking it all off with the final project of Phase 5 of the MCU, Ironheart, one of the most popular Marvel characters ever, and one of the most anticipated MCU projects ever. Right? Let's find out, shall we? This is the review of Champions, and I'm your host, Grandmaster. With me is a powerful panel made up of the finest champions Sakar has to offer. Let me introduce them to you. First up, on camera, the original Mr. Taylor First. How are you, man?
I'm excellent.
Good to see you again, man. Voice only, we have the grand old lady of the podcast of champions, Lokismom. How are you?
I'm very iron-hearted today.
Very well. And last but certainly not least, we have Mr. Lord Deathman, also voice only. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well, and it's great to be back in the arena.
Yes, absolutely. Today we're going to talk about episode 1, 2, and 3 of Ironheart. But before we do, I want to ask you all to help us out. Like and share this video, subscribe to our channel, and join our forum at sakar.freeforums.net. You can do that by clicking on the link in the description. That will get you to the setup an account page, and then you can talk to us directly on the board. We would love it if you do that. Consider this your final warning. After this, we're going to talk about those 3 episodes in depth. So if you haven't seen them, do that first and then check out our review. Well, Ironheart. Riri Williams is back on campus after her Wakandan adventure. Unfortunately for her, it doesn't really last long, I think. For Deathman, quick thoughts on the first 3 episodes of Ironheart. And be fair.
Indeed. Always. So, putting aside some of the background noise, I'll call it the white noise surrounding this character, when it comes to more social commentary and political rhetoric. I think if you look at the show objectively, while I can't make the strongest recommendation for this show to the entire MCU fandom, like this is must watch appointment MCU television, I can say that I think that if you are a diehard fan and you're a completionist and you kind of want to be in the know about current events in terms of the MCU, and you're just kind of looking for something that I think passes the time, I think Ironheart probably would fit the bill in that way. It is not a perfect show, which I'll go into in my deep dive. It does suffer from a couple of cliches of the genre and not the strongest storytelling or characterizations. But I do think that there's enough there to hold your attention, and the show isn't nearly as bad, I think, as it's being portrayed. And I think one of the strongest aspects of the show itself is the character of Riri Williams. I was surprisingly entertained and kind of engaged by her struggle.
Okay. Can't wait to hear your deep dive. Lokismom, what did you think of the first 3 episodes of Ironheart? Quick thoughts.
Yeah, quick thoughts. I went into this not really knowing who this character was. I mean, she was in the Black Panther movie. She didn't impress me then, but so I really wasn't expecting a lot from this show. I will say that the actress who plays Riri is very engaging. She's very good, and I think she makes the show. I mean, I think without her performance element here, it would be more muddled than what it is. One thing, talking about the social aspects, I think what they tried to do was they kind of loaded up this show with stereotypes and played them off for laughs. I mean, which is a long tradition in American culture and Western culture. So but I think they kind of got a little ham-fisted with it at times. But other than that, there was some. I think a lot of too many characters, somewhat. But once the show sort of got going, once it got into the second episode, into the third episode, it did certainly picked up. And at that point, I was more engaged with the whole thing.
Yeah, I actually agree with your distinct separating the first episode and the two latter episodes. But we'll get to that in your deeper dive as well. I think, Taylor, did you enjoy the first 3 episodes of Ironheart?
Yeah, overall, I enjoyed the first 3 episodes. I think the character is much more interesting in this than she was in Wakanda Forever. I think they've made some good decisions in the execution and what they're doing with all the other characters as well as Riri. Time will tell on how they stick the landing with the last 3 episodes. But so far, like I said, I wasn't disappointed. I wasn't expecting much from this show, but I've enjoyed it so far.
Okay, it's good to hear. I kind of agree. I had some trouble getting into it. The first episode, I just don't know if it was the editing or the way they told the story or the way they were setting it up, but I had some trouble getting into the show. That improved with the second episode, and by the third episode, I was actually on board with it. A major improvement. So I also really enjoyed the first 3 episodes for the most part. But is it flawless? Absolutely not. Lokismom. Tell me, what were your problems with the first episode, and how did that change in the second and third episodes? And any criticisms, positive standouts? Talk to me.
Well, one thing I did love about it, and I kind of watched for it because it was, since this is an Iron Man's one of his proteges, was, and then they finally did get to it when they did the opening credit with the Ironheart name, where she hits the ground and she rolls, and and then she's flopped out there, just like Tony Stark is when he's blown up, and he's laying there with the stuff parts around him and whatnot. So I think that was an homage to that. And I think the other opening credits, they kind of play on that theme, so that's kind of a plus for it. I think they took a little too much time establishing Riri's character, because we had to learn about her family and learn why she's traumatized by a drive-by shooting that kills her best friend. And of course, it opens up with her friend, how much she loved her friend and how close they were, and then but there's a lot of that. I mean, it's just, and then finally it's when she builds the AI that inadvertently becomes, takes on the personality of Natalie. That was just a little too heavy-handed. I did think that very last scene in the first episode where well, who'd you think it was, bitch? I thought that was it, but it was so stereotypical, but played for laughs. And so we have to kind of look at it that way. But yeah, it's just a little too much establishment in that first episode. Yeah, I mean, we don't need to know a lot about it. We get the idea of how much she's traumatized by the loss of her best friend. So, but they kind of keep going at it and going at it. Okay, well, and I'm sure she is traumatized, but compared to everything else that the human race has gone through up to that point, she should be more traumatized than just from her friends and her I guess it's her stepfather's death. Once he gets into the second episode and it sort of gets into that gang, the Hood, and then I guess they're economic terrorists, and yeah, I mean, they're just criminals. They put on this facade that they're doing this because they want to save the world from the rich people, but no, really, the Hood just wants to build his own criminal. He wants to be the next Tony Stark or the next big person. And that was one thing that they would kind of establish was, Tony Stark got to be Tony Stark because he was filthy rich. And how does the people who don't have his money, how do they become superheroes? How do they access that technology? And so, yeah, in that sense, I like that part of it. And then once it gets into the action sequences, more into the second and third episode, and then we learn at the very in the third episode what's his name, Joe McGillicuddy, I believe that's his name. It goes by. Well, we learn that he's actually Zeke's Obadiah Stane's son. So all of a sudden, we're thrown back to the first Iron Man, and I did like that. I like that they all the way back far, though many years back, they are able to bring that element of that Iron Man movie through Stane's son, at least, into this particular. And I think maybe their relationship really works. I like how they work together, and there might be a little bit of a thing going on between them. I think there was a little spark there between them. So hopefully, maybe that's going forward. We'll see a little bit more of that. But and who knows? Maybe Zeke will turn out to be even worse than the Hood. So we'll see.
Yeah, we will just have to wait and see. Thank you for your deeper dive. Taylor, do you have any criticisms of those three episodes or one episode in particular? Or
Uh, I didn't have a problem with the pacing of the three episodes. If they felt fine to me. I think they did a good job of establishing her situation and her mental state. I mean, she has been through a lot. We saw, of course, her go through a lot in the movie, and now we know what she went through before that with the loss of her friend and her stepfather. So I think they did a pretty good job of setting all that up. This character, if I'm not mistaken, this character wasn't even created in the comics until the MCU was already a thing and established, which tells me they planned to put this character into live action at some point from the beginning. Does the MCU need this character? No, which is probably why they're spitting out the episode so quickly. They have right now the MCU is a little bit overstuffed, and they're trying to get back to that quality over quantity that they used to have. So I'm afraid this character might just this might be the last we see of her. The next time, the only other time we might see her again, I would think, would be if they do that Champions show that they mentioned. If that ever happens, she may show up there. But it's kind of sad because, like I said, I think this show so far is going pretty well. Um, uh, the motivations of the gang, the criminals there, a little bit weak, a little bit thin, but it's a comic book show, and we need a gang of criminals to commit crimes, so that's what they're doing. I think I like the gang in that, like, not every side character needs to be this huge flamboyant special character that we get into and love and everything, but at the same time the characters are not totally generic. They each at least have a little bit of unique personality and unique aspects to them, which I like that they at least did that. The Hood, I mean, the actor is really good. I assume at this point, I'm assuming that he has an ulterior motive. He's told his gang, we're gonna stick it to these rich people they made up reasons to hate these rich people. I don't know if any of it's true or not, but they have their made up reasons. But I assume the Hood has some sort of ulterior motive for targeting these particular um, companies, and I assume he's stealing something else from them because he's making them sign contracts, which of course will give him access to things, and of course he's doing that by blackmail, which I like that in the last guy there, the agriculture on the water thing, whatever the heck they were doing out there. His cousin warned him. He told him, "Look, we don't have anything on this guy. We can't blackmail him like we did the others." And that is why it all went to garbage when they tried to rob the guy, because the guy said, "No, I'm not signing this contract. Screw you. Get out of my place." And of course, it all hit the fan then, and the cousin got killed. So again, I think the story build-up has done quite well. Riri, again, the character is much more interesting than she was in Wakanda Forever. She's dealing with a lot of trauma. She's making some really, really bad decisions. She's trying to convince herself that she's not a criminal, but she's a criminal. In fact, she's a super criminal right now. She's using her high-tech armor suit to commit crimes. And that we saw at the end of the final episode there that a straight-up panic attack had hit her. And I think she's realized just how much she has screwed up things without even realizing it. Um, so again, is any of this making this wow must see greatest show? Everyone I know needs to go out and see the show. No, it's for an MCU TV show, it's not the worst by a long shot. It's certainly nowhere near the best either, but it's entertaining so far. Just want to touch real quick on the character of Natalie, the AI version of Natalie. That character serves two purposes. One is a very standard purpose, which is the same reason that Batman has Robin and Doctor Who has companions and James Bond has Bond girls. All right, the hero has to have someone to talk to so that the audience knows what's going on. But the other purpose of this Natalie character is without her, this show is really quite dark. And if she wasn't there, this would be the Snyderverse, and nobody wants that. So she brings a lightness, a tone, an uplifting energy to the show, I think. So I think that's why they did it the way they did. And I also think it's pretty interesting the way they did it. Now, of course, I hate when people, say, well, that how did that happen? That technology wouldn't work, and her shirt covers the camera that projects her AI. Look, it's a superhero comic book show. There's a guy who weighs 150 pounds and turns into a 10-foot giant rage monster. Okay, there's no physics involved in any of this stuff, so just get past that. This is pulp, all right. And I think but I think the way they've utilized the character and the actress who's playing the character is doing a good job. So again, it could all fall apart here in the next 3 episodes. I'm also very curious, of course, that obviously there's someone pulling the strings for the Hood as well. We don't know who that is. I'm sure there's chatter online about it. And I don't know what their end game is or why they gave this power to the Hood and what they're trying to get out of it. But he's talking to somebody there at the end who's giving him information. So again, I'm pretty intrigued to see what happens in the next 3 episodes. Again, you know, it's not like WandaVision where I was completely hooked and addicted from the first episode, but it's also not like, you know, She-Hulk where 3 episodes in I was like, please make it stop, you know. So far so good.
Yeah. Yeah. I get what you're saying, and I agree. Lord Deathman, let's have it. Your deep dive on the first 3 episodes of Ironheart.
My pleasure to do so. I'm going to start by just getting my criticisms of the show out of the way because they're not a lot by any means. But one, I think surprisingly, I found a lot of the tech aspects of this show to be really hand wavy. And I get it. This is comic book genre, fantasy type stuff. But there was always this tactile quality that Iron Man had in the beginning, at least in the first and second movies, that kind of blended fantasy with a kind of speculative, approach to the character. But here, it just like is this really how this technology really works? But in any event, once you get past some of the first hand wavy stuff, you're like, all right, I know what kind of ride this is. I'm not going to think too much about that aspect of it, but it was enough to pull me out of the show at times. For example, I'll just do one quick example: the necklace that she has that kind of projects her AI, Natalie. I'm like, okay, is that really a projector? Like nobody is seeing her glitch out while she's talking to this AI on the street, and how is it that she's bending down, but the projection is still like perfect and not occluded by any objects in between it? But again, I know where I stand in terms of the genre, and that was pretty much easy to dismiss. My second criticism is really about our gang of sort of misfit criminals. I feel that they were kind of cosplaying as criminals and not necessarily credible in that way. And I'm not sure if that's really what they were going for in the writer's room. If it was, they were very successful. But outside of that, they just didn't kind of vibe as like, hey, we are a gang of career criminals that are trying to do these jobs in specialized operations for profit. They really always come off a very childlike, in a cliched kind of way that took me out of the show a bit. And then the third criticism I have is that while I think Riri's story is interesting, and while I think it's engaging, I thought some of the family dynamics that they brought to the table also felt cliched. I thought the writers could have reached a little bit more. I mean, the kind of inner city urban trope of a drive-by shooting. I mean, really, this would be I know this is a thing that happens in this milieu, but it really kind of felt like, yeah, we could have stretched for new ideas. Does no one die of cancer in these situations, or something else?
In Chicago, they
So
don't live long enough to die from cancer.
it's the square cut pizza that kills them, or the rampant sneaker game that kills them out there. So I thought, like, and then we actually go to a scene where it's the classic young person in their room, creating mischief, while there's a parent that wants you to come down to dinner or is demanding that you tell them what's going on in the room. I think that goes all the way back to Sam Raimi and like Toby Maguire's Peter Parker trapped in his room, messing around with his web slingers. And I'm like, okay, they pulled that one off the shelf, and that one feels a little worn in terms of. But if they had have made some different choices like that, tried to be a little bolder and riskier in the storytelling, they might have created something that just doesn't feel so familiar. But those are really my criticisms of the show. Those are the only three areas that kind of took me out of the storytelling. I didn't really grade this on an episode basis because it was presented to me as three episodes, and I kind of watched them as this long run on sentence. So I didn't kind of evaluate the tone or pacing of each episode. It was just one kind of longish movie to me. And what I really thought was strong about this is I like the character of Riri Williams. There's a lot of like dialogue about, oh, do we need this character? This character shouldn't exist. First of all, I wouldn't ever say that any character shouldn't exist. Once you're on the board as a character, we all have to live with it, whether you like the character or you don't like the character. But you don't want to get into this person needs to be erased in a fictional world, because I think that can propagate up to the real world, and we really don't need to have discussions that sound like that. But in any event, I think she's a very interesting character. I think the way they framed her kind of I guess it's anxiety. She suffers from panic attacks. I thought that was an interesting facet of her character. And I just really enjoyed the most about this series being back in the world of Stark Tech, or now Stark Tech slash Riri Tech. I just like the idea of seeing like a conventional Iron Man back, and it's not made out of weird nanotechnology, and there isn't a helmet that just comes out of nowhere. It's like she had a physical suit again, and watching that thing take off and use, directed energy weapons, and soar with jets and rockets and boosters. That's just such a fun experience in the MCU, and it's what makes Iron Man great. We can't have a Tony Stark here, but I think we have someone who could potentially carry on the legacy in a way that's also entertaining but brings a different spin to it. My favorite, absolute favorite aspect of this show, though, is I think Riri's approach to it. She's a flawed character, but I think that she's starting to realize that she can't buck the trend, like wholesale drop out of the world and the establishment. But I do think that she's trying to democratize the Iron Man, right? Like Stark's approach to Iron Man is that it is a personal weapon. It is a personal suit of combat for combat that he uses alone. It has a trillion or billion-dollar microprocessor in it that's like a fusion reactor. You can't have but so many Iron Men, right? Like he can be supported by these automatons in the Iron League and all of that. The Iron Legion, my bad. But I think Riri's idea of like, hey, I'm going to take the Iron Man and turn it into something that is solar powered, so it doesn't need a multi-billion-dollar microprocessor or fusion reactor to power it. I want to make this so that first responders can use it. I want to democratize this technology. I like her mission statement, is what I'm trying to say. And if they can really build on that and kind of explore her different approach to Iron Man and Stark Tech and that legacy, I think they really will have something strong on their hands, if they can get this into the hands of some writers and folks who are willing to be a little bit bolder with the storytelling. But my final pronouncement in the deep dive here is that while this is definitely not essential MCU watching, I do think you could call it minor MCU. And if you are a completionist or a diehard fan and you happen to have the 2 plus hours or nearly 3 hours to sit with the show, it will be worth your while under those circumstances.
Yeah, I agree. It is certainly worth your time, even though I had some issues with it, as I said before, but I still like it though. After the third episode, I'm invested. So, yeah. Can't wait for episode 4, 5, and 6. By the way, we will not be reviewing that next week because it's an American holiday then. We will do that the week after. Heads up for you there, guys. There's not much to do but rate the first
Well,
3 episodes.
can I toss my hand up
Yeah.
for a follow up? Yeah, you're talking about the setup in the South Side of Chicago, in the ghetto, as it were, and that is one of the nicest ghettos I've ever seen. I mean,
It is.
that
It is.
apartment building, which I'm assuming is supposed to be the projects, looks to me like they would go for like $175,000 a condo.
Chicago has never looked better than it
Yeah,
did in Ironheart.
I couldn't see J.J. Jimmy Walker living in that. Maybe the real Jimmy Walker should certainly live in it. And one other thing, we're talking about the character Natalie. I think it's kind of like how Jarvis was. He was sort of like Tony Stark's conscience, sort of like his Jiminy Cricket whispering in his ear, trying to keep him on the moral straight and narrow. But Natalie's not really doing that. She, maybe she doesn't understand. She's AI. Perhaps she doesn't understand. So I'm not going to blame the real Natalie for the character flaw there. But she is the one who kills, because at the end she's trying to save Riri, but she slams that door that they're in the greenhouse, and the one, I guess he's like the gang member who's related to the Hood. I think he dies from that. So I think the next 3 episodes, if they do it right, and it looks like they may be heading in that direction, I think now it's going to be Natalie has to figure out how to fix all this, because she's really let herself fall into a moral hole of criminality, and maybe she was predisposed to that because she grew up in a rough neighborhood and everything, because she was selling tests and whatnot, papers and college students, which is big terrible thing to do. I mean, you've ruined your life at that point if you get caught doing that. But yeah, so perhaps it'll be she's going to try to make things right and redeem her character, and of course, if she does, that's part of what the MCU does.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just thinking when she was selling homework and papers and stuff like that, don't those students know about ChatGPT or something?
Yeah, you think they would know that.
But
Well, I was thinking, instead of handing them a dark envelope in an alley, couldn't you email this stuff to these kids? get paid in Bitcoin?
Yeah, they found out about her anyway.
As always, you need to suspend your disbelief. But let's not rip it apart at that level. We're not certain people from other boards who did that. But anyway, you guys know who I mean.
Yeah.
That Dallas Cowboy guy. Anyway, you know what? Let's rate the first 3 episodes of Ironheart. And if you want to split them, you can. Taylor, I'm starting with you.
Yeah, I'll just rate all three of them together. The show up to this point. Um, I don't like knockoff characters. I don't think we need a new Iron Man or anyone to carry on the legacy. We've got more than enough heroes, but the MCU has decided to make this show, and like I said, so far I'm enjoying it. So 8 out of 10.
Okay, fair enough. Lord Deathman.
Yep, I too am not a huge fan of the idea of legacy characters. If you had asked me to create this character, I probably would not have gone down the road. But she's here, and I think picking her on that basis, there's something interesting here, and I too will go ahead and give all three. I think I'm going to go with a 6 across the board so far in terms of how the show has turned out. And I also just want to give a quick shout out to Natalie as the AI. I think that actress is doing some pretty charming work. And it's interesting to see some brown girl energy surrounding, tech, even though it is feeling a little hand wavy at this point. But I'm anxious to see what happens in the next 3 episodes.
Yep. Me too. Lokismom. Can I have your number for the first 3 episodes?
Yeah, I'm gonna say that it kind of started out as a 6.5 for me, but then it kind of gained steam over the next 2 episodes. So I'm gonna end up with a 7.5.
Okay, fair enough. I'm gonna go 6 out of 10 as well. I like it, but the start was too rough for me to go higher than a 6. I hope in 2 weeks' time I can give it a full endorsement with an 8 or 9. But it's not going to be a 10, that I can tell you. Well, that will conclude this review of Champions for episode 1, 2, and 3 of Ironheart. We hope you have enjoyed our discussion today. If you did, help us out. Like and share this review and subscribe to our channel. And if you really want more of us, join our forum at sakar.freeforums.net. We would love it if you do that. There's a brand new episode out of our Star Trek project as well this weekend. Yeah, we're working hard for you now after a month of rest. And of course, we will be covering all events in July, like Superman and Fantastic Four. Expect our MCU Legacy series to continue, and we may talk about SDCC or MCU Phase 5 as that is wrapping up. We will make it worth the wait. For now, I thank you all, also on behalf of our champions, and wish your hearts to be made of gold. Bye!